How Amish mothers teach their daughters to run a household before they turn 16. But here's what most people don't realize. This isn't actually about teaching household management at all. It's something much more revolutionary. And I'm going to show you exactly what that hidden system is, because once you understand it, you'll see why modern families are struggling with independence, resilience, and identity in ways the Amish simply never do. Stay with me, because at the very end of this video, I'm going to reveal the one counterintuitive principle that changes everything. If you've grown up in a plain community, or you're curious about how these families maintain their way of life, I want you to drop a comment below and tell me, what skill did your grandmother or mother teach you that you still use today? That one thing you learned not from a video, but from watching and doing it 100 times? Because that's exactly what we're unpacking in this video. And before we go any further, I need to let you know that the complete guide to understanding Amish education and household apprenticeship, the deep mechanisms behind how this actually works, is available in the description and pinned in the comment section below. It's the resource that breaks down not just the what, but the why and the how of generational knowledge transfer. Wait, this part is important. Most people think the Amish are teaching their daughters domestic skills as a way to keep them confined to traditional roles. That's a fundamental misunderstanding. What's actually happening is something your own ancestors knew, something your great-grandparents practiced, but something modern parenting has almost completely abandoned. The Amish aren't running a finishing school. They're not checking boxes on a curriculum. They're conducting something far more sophisticated, a complete education in autonomy, problem-solving, and unshakable confidence that happens entirely through participation in real, consequential work. Let me be direct about what's different here. In mainstream American parenting, we've separated education from life. A girl learns chemistry in a classroom. She learns cooking from a YouTube video. She learns budgeting from a worksheet. But she never learns any of these things in a context where failure actually costs something, where burning the bread means the family goes without, where a mended seam that unravels means going without that dress until it's fixed again, where miscalculating how much food to make means everyone stays hungry. The Amish girl, by contrast, learns every single practical skill she will need, not in isolation, but in a web of consequences and real accountability. And that changes everything about how she sees herself and her capabilities. By age 16, an Amish girl hasn't just learned to cook, preserve food, manage a household budget, make clothing, and maintain a home. She has learned something far more valuable. She has learned that her competence is real, observable, and essential. She hasn't been told she's capable. She has been made to be capable through hundreds of hours of guided practice in situations where her actions have tangible consequences that other people depend on. Now, here's where this gets interesting, and where your own family might be missing something critical. The Amish system isn't about perfection. Notice that the girl was allowed to make mistakes. She wasn't prevented from failure. She was guided through recovery from failure. Her mother didn't take over the task. She didn't say, "Let me show you how to do this properly." She allowed the girl to discover the mistake herself, to understand it, and to correct it. That might sound like a small thing, but in terms of how confidence actually develops, it's monumental. When you teach a skill in an abstract context, when it's a unit to complete or a video to watch, the learner's brain is in school mode. She's trying to satisfy the requirements of an external authority figure. But when you teach a skill in the context of maintaining a household that real people live in, the learner's brain shifts. She's not trying to get the grade. She's trying to feed her family. The stakes are different. The motivation is internal, not external. And that internal motivation is what stays with you for life. By the time an Amish girl turns 16, she has developed what psychologists call self-efficacy, the deep belief that she can manage challenges and produce results that matter. She isn't hoping she can run a household. She knows it. She's done it, every single day, for years. What's crucial to understand is that this education system doesn't just happen. It's deeply intentional, though it never feels formal. The mother is constantly calibrating, withdrawing support at exactly the right moment so the girl feels challenged but not abandoned, adding support back in when the girl is genuinely struggling, letting natural consequences teach the lesson without shaming or criticism. This is a craft, a real, deliberate art form of parenting and education. And the reason it's become invisible to modern families is that we've outsourced teaching to institutions. We've separated the person who loves you from the person who teaches you. We've turned learning into a service that happens in a dedicated space at a dedicated time, rather than something that's woven through the fabric of everyday living. Now, before we continue, I want you to consider something carefully. Everything you're seeing here, the kitchen setup, the teaching methods, the timing of skill transfer, it all rests on a single principle that most modern parenting has abandoned. And that principle is what separates children who grow up capable and confident from children who grow up anxious and dependent, regardless of their socioeconomic status or how much parental attention they receive. That principle is explained in full detail in the complete guide to Amish household education that's available through the description and pinned in the comment section. It breaks down not just what skills are taught, but exactly how the timing, the environment, and the relationship structure create someone who is genuinely self-reliant. This isn't theoretical. It's the operating manual of how confidence actually gets built in a young person. The Amish understand something that modern parenting advice has almost completely lost. They understand that children, particularly girls transitioning into womanhood, need to experience themselves as capable, not in theory, but in practice. Not through affirmations or participation trophies or being told they're special, but through the real, tangible experience of doing something difficult, doing it well, and watching it matter. By age 14, this girl has probably been managing significant portions of household work for several years. By age 16, she's capable of running an entire household independently, if necessary. What we're really looking at here is a time-tested system for raising daughters who will never need to ask permission to exist. Girls who will never look to external authorities to validate their worth or their abilities. Girls who know, without doubt, that they can handle what life demands of them. And that's something that transcends culture, religion, or geography. Any family can learn from this principle. End of part 1. But here's what most modern parents don't understand about this system, and this is critical. The Amish aren't teaching their daughters to be perfect homemakers. They're teaching them something far more valuable. They're teaching them self-reliance. They're teaching them that their hands can create, that their decisions matter, and that competence is the only permission they'll ever truly need. In a survival sense, this training is everything. Think about it. When the grid fails, and yes, I mean when, not if, the families that survive won't be the ones with the most stored food or the fanciest equipment. They'll be the families where everyone, including the daughters, knows how to preserve food without electricity, how to manage a household without modern utilities, and how to think through problems instead of waiting for someone else to solve them. The Amish mother isn't just teaching her daughter to cook. She's teaching her to understand food preservation without refrigeration. She's teaching her daughter the same skills that kept entire communities alive through winters before we had electricity. Drying, salting, smoking, fermenting, root cellar management. These aren't quaint traditions anymore. These are survival skills. And the same applies to every other area of household management. When an Amish girl learns to manage a household fire, because many Amish communities still use wood stoves as their primary heat source, she's learning thermal management. She's learning how to maintain consistent temperature, how to conserve fuel, how to read the signs of a fire. That knowledge will matter. It has mattered for centuries. It will matter again. When she learns to manage water without turning a tap, carrying it, storing it, conserving it, she's developing an understanding of resource scarcity that most modern teenagers have never had to consider. The average American girl has never thought about water as anything other than abundant and free. An Amish girl understands its weight, its value, its necessity. But let me be direct about something here, because this matters for understanding the bigger picture. The difference isn't that one girl is better than the other. It's that one girl has been deliberately trained in practical competence from childhood, and the other has been encouraged to develop different skills, mostly digital, mostly abstract. One girl knows how to survive independently. The other knows how to navigate complex digital systems. Neither is inherently superior, but they're radically different in terms of self-sufficiency. And here's where this gets really interesting from a survival perspective. Wait, before we continue, I need you to really pay attention to what's happening here. This isn't just about doing chores. This is about how you build a human being who is genuinely prepared for uncertainty. And if you want to understand exactly how this training shapes not just daughters, but entire family systems and communities that survive where others fail, I've created a complete guide that breaks down every principle, every stage, and every psychological mechanism at work. It's called the Lost Skills Manual. All the details are in the description and pinned comment. This is the resource that transforms these ideas from interesting observations into a practical system you can actually apply. Because that's what we're really talking about. We're talking about building resilience. In Amish culture, there's no such thing as learned helplessness. There's no space for, I don't know how to do that, so someone else will handle it. Every skill has to be learned because there's no alternative. If you don't know how to preserve meat, your family doesn't eat meat in winter. If you don't know how to manage a fire, your family is cold. If you don't know how to treat a basic illness with plants and traditional methods, you live with the consequences. This creates daughters and sons, but we're focused on daughters here, who don't experience anxiety the way many modern teenagers do. They don't face the existential question of, what if I can't do it? Because they've already done dozens of impossible-sounding things. They've already learned that their hands work, their minds work, their efforts produce real results. The psychological impact of this cannot be overstated. In modern psychology, there's a concept called self-efficacy. Essentially, it's your belief in your own ability to succeed. Study after study shows that self-efficacy is one of the strongest predictors of actual success in life. People who believe they can do things tend to do them. People who doubt themselves tend to fail, not because they lack ability, but because they don't try. Amish mothers are systematically building self-efficacy in their daughters. Every time a daughter completes a task that seemed hard, her brain registers success. Every time she solves a problem independently, she's building neural pathways that make problem-solving easier next time. Every time she produces something useful, a meal, preserved food, a clean house, repaired clothing, she's adding evidence to her own internal belief that she's capable. Now, translate that forward into survival scenario. A girl who grew up in the Amish system doesn't panic when the power goes out. She's already lived without electricity her whole life. A girl who learned to preserve food from her mother doesn't freeze when she considers how to keep her family fed through winter without a refrigerator. She's already done it dozens of times. A girl who learned to manage resources carefully doesn't fall apart when external systems fail. She's already managed on less. She already knows how. This is what we mean by lost survival skills. Not just the technical knowledge, though that matters enormously, but the psychological architecture, the unshakable belief that you can handle what comes. Most modern teenagers have been protected from genuine failure their whole lives. They've been praised for effort even when results were poor. They've been given participation trophies. They've been told that the system will catch them if they fall. And then they turn 18, and suddenly they're facing real stakes for the first time. An Amish girl at 16 has already failed at things. She's already learned that failure isn't permanent. It's feedback. She's already experienced the consequence of not doing something right, and she's already had the opportunity to do it better next time. This is systemic training in what psychologists call grit or resilience, and it can't be faked. You can't give someone grit through a workshop or an app. You build it through repeated, real-world challenges where the outcome actually matters. The Amish have systematized this. Every daughter knows what's expected. Every daughter has models to follow. Every daughter gets genuine feedback and real responsibility. Every daughter gets to experience the direct consequence of her work, which is that her family's well-being improves. There's no separation between effort and impact. The daughter doesn't do the work to satisfy a grading rubric or to get a gold star on a chart. She does the work because her family depends on her. And when her family eats and is nourished, she sees the direct result of her labor. That's real. And in a genuine survival situation, whether that's economic collapse, infrastructure failure, or any form of disruption to the normal systems we rely on, that kind of real-world competence and psychological preparation becomes irreplaceable. This is the secret I promised you at the beginning, and it's not really about cooking or cleaning or household management at all. It's about something far deeper that modern parenting has almost entirely abandoned. When an Amish mother teaches her daughter to run a household before age 16, she's not just transferring skills. She's transferring something that neuroscience now confirms takes years to develop: the ability to handle real responsibility, to tolerate genuine consequence, and to find identity and worth in competence rather than in praise or external validation. Think about what a typical modern teenager experiences. They go to school where effort is separated from real consequence. A grade is the artificial reward. They come home to a house where chores are optional negotiation points. They're told constantly that their potential is unlimited, but they're rarely given a context where their actual contribution meaningfully changes someone else's life. An Amish daughter, by contrast, lives in a world where her actions have immediate, visible, non-negotiable consequences. If she doesn't prepare food, her family goes hungry. Not theoretically, but literally. If she doesn't manage the wash correctly, her younger siblings don't have clean clothes. If she lets the fire go out in winter, the house gets cold. That's not punishment. That's reality. And reality is the greatest teacher of responsibility that exists. Neuroscientists call this agency, the psychological sense that your actions matter and that you can influence your world. Teenagers who lack agency develop anxiety, depression, and a fragile sense of self. Teenagers who have real agency, who have spent years experiencing genuine consequence and meaningful contribution, develop resilience, confidence, and a stable identity rooted in actual competence rather than social performance. An Amish girl doesn't wonder if she's capable. She knows. She's been proving it every single day for years. But here's what makes this even more relevant to survival. In a genuine crisis, whether that's a job loss, a natural disaster, an infrastructure failure, or any major disruption, the people who survive and adapt best are not those with the most information or the highest IQ. They're the people with what researchers call learned resourcefulness. They're the people who have experience solving real problems with limited resources, who aren't paralyzed by perfectionism, and who have a stable sense of their own capability. An Amish girl has spent her teenage years developing exactly that. She's already failed at things. She's already adapted. She's already proven to herself that she can handle difficulty without external validation or a support system telling her she's doing fine. She's built psychological resilience the only way it's actually built, through real challenge and real consequence and real success. When everything in the modern world tells us that we need more information, more data, more certification, more external confirmation of our worth, the Amish are quietly raising daughters who don't need any of that. They're raising girls who know themselves through what they can do, who find security not in praise but in competence, who can walk into any situation and figure out what needs to happen next because they've been doing exactly that for years. That's not a skill you can download. That's not something you get from watching YouTube tutorials or reading survival guides, though those things help. That's something that only develops through years of real responsibility in a real community where your work genuinely matters. So if you're raising children in the modern world, the question isn't really, how do I teach my daughter to cook or clean? It's a deeper one. How do I give my daughter a context where her competence actually matters, where her failure has real consequence and her success has real reward, where she builds an identity based on what she can do rather than what others think of her? The Amish have been answering that question for centuries, not through worksheets or motivation seminars, but through something far more ancient and powerful, through real life. Start with one thing this week. Give one of the young people in your life a real responsibility with real consequence, not a task to complete for a grade or a reward, but something that genuinely matters to your household. Let them plan and prepare one meal, knowing that your family's well-being depends on their competence. Let them see what happens when they do it well. Let them experience what it feels like to contribute something real. That single shift, from pseudo-responsibility to genuine responsibility, is where everything changes. Thanks so much for staying with me all the way through. If this kind of deep dive into Amish culture and forgotten wisdom matters to you, please hit that subscribe button, leave a comment below sharing what responsibility you're going to give a young person this week, and turn on those notifications so you never miss when we upload. We've got so much more to explore together about the way our ancestors actually survived and thrived. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one. Target DOPSHU 6.666 additional characters for Part 3. Actually, wait. I want to correct something about what I said earlier. I realize I may have oversimplified how this works in real Amish households, and I want to be more precise because precision matters when we're talking about survival and practical skill building. In Amish culture, there's actually a deliberate balance between responsibility and guidance that modern parents often miss. The daughter isn't just left alone to figure it out. She's given responsibility within a framework of apprenticeship. She sees, she does alongside, she does with supervision, she does independently. That progression takes years. But here's what matters for survival. She's not just learning the how, she's learning the why. She's learning the DAC standards. She's learning what done well actually looks like, not from a checklist, but from watching someone do it well 10,000 times. And that's something that changes everything in a genuine survival scenario. If you're in an actual emergency, if the power goes out for 2 weeks, if supply chains are disrupted, if you're isolated for an extended period, the difference between someone who memorized a recipe and someone who has internalized the standards of competence becomes the difference between survival and failure. An Amish woman doesn't preserve food because she read an article about how to preserve food. She preserves food because she's watched her mother and grandmother preserve food, because she knows what properly canned food should look like, smell like, feel like. She has what we might call embodied knowledge, knowledge that lives in her hands and her senses, not just in her conscious mind. When systems fail, when there's no USDA guideline to consult, no expert to call, no Google to verify, the people who survive are the ones whose knowledge is woven into their nervous system, not just stored in their conscious memory. This is something modern survivalism often misses. We talk about skills as though they're modular things. You learn fire starting, you learn water purification, you learn food preservation. Check the boxes. You're prepared. But that's not how human competence actually works. Competence is built through repetition, within relationship, within real consequence. It's the opposite of modular. It's integrated. It's deep. When an Amish mother teaches her daughter these things from age 5 to 16, what she's actually building is not a list of skills. She's building a daughter who has spent over a decade in intimate apprenticeship with someone she trusts, in a context where the stakes are real and the feedback is immediate and the standards are non-negotiable. That girl's nervous system has been calibrated. Her judgment has been refined through thousands of hours of real work. Her confidence isn't theoretical. It's earned. And that specific thing that Amish culture has been building for centuries is exactly what a genuine survival situation requires. The reason I want to emphasize this is because there's a temptation, especially in survival communities, to think that information is the limiting factor. That if we just know more, if we just have the right bushcraft knowledge, the right prepper supplies, the right emergency protocols, we'll be fine. But actual survival requires something that information alone can't give you. It requires a calm nervous system, good judgment under pressure, and the ability to notice subtle cues in a complex situation and respond appropriately. Those things only come from practice in a real context with real stakes. An Amish girl has had that practice. A teenager who learned cooking from YouTube videos, even really good YouTube videos, has not. This doesn't mean you have to raise your children in an Amish way to raise them well. It means you have to understand what the Amish actually understand. That real competence requires time, real responsibility, and real consequence. There's no shortcut. If you want your children to be genuinely resilient, not just to have survival skills, but to have the kind of deep, embodied competence that actually keeps people alive in difficult situations, you have to create a context where that competence can develop. And that context requires real responsibility and real stakes. Start small. Choose one thing. Not a list of things. One thing. Maybe it's that your teenager is responsible for one complete meal once a week, and your family depends on it. Maybe it's that they're responsible for maintaining the fire, or managing the garden, or caring for an animal. Something real. Something where they can't fake it. Something where they'll learn through doing and through consequence. Do that for a year. Just one real responsibility, and watch what changes. Not just their skill with that particular task, though that will improve dramatically, but something deeper. Watch how their sense of themselves shifts. Watch how their anxiety about their own capability changes. Watch how they begin to find identity in what they can actually do rather than in external markers of success. That's what the Amish mother is really teaching. Not household management. Identity, competence, self-knowledge rooted in reality. And in a world that's becoming increasingly uncertain, that's the most valuable survival skill there is. Thank you for watching all the way through this one. If you found value in this exploration of how Amish communities actually raise resilient young people, please subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment below telling me what one responsibility you're going to give a young person this week, and hit that notification bell so you never miss when we release new content about the forgotten wisdom our ancestors lived by every single day. I appreciate you being here, and I'll see you in the next